The only reason I was brave enough to reach out to you is I looked at your LinkedIn and I think you're doing okay, which means we didn't ruin you. So I was like, wow, okay. And, when someone says that, I give them, I thank them for their courage, right? We had coffee and we talked about it. And something that stuck with me was she's like, we didn't like you because you're the only person that seems to have your strong center. You knew what you wanted and who you were.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Clean Your Toilet. I'm Leila. I'm a childbirth educator, a birth coach, a doula for the last 10 years, and I'm a mom of 2, almost 3. And also, I'm a trauma-informed space holder, and currently we're doing a lot of 90 breath work. And today we have Susan with us.
Hi, thanks for having me. Hi. I'm Susan Chen. I'm a PhD researcher, a HR practitioner, a mother of 1. He's a 5-year-old boy. And then I now run a HR strategy consulting called CoGrow.
Wow, that sounds like a lot of accolades to your name. And I love it. I love that we're both working with people in different capacity. Well, today we want to talk a little bit about ourselves.
Great, an hour to talk about ourselves. That sounds fun.
And how, I always believe that if you don't heal yourself, you can't help other people. You can't love, if you don't love yourself, you can't allow people to love you. So we're going to go deep dive a little bit into all of that, right? And what do you want to start with? Do you want to start with love? Do you want to start with inner work?
Oh, wow, I got to choose. Let's talk about love.
Okay.
It feels like a great topic.
Great. So do you think couples are meant to complete each other or challenge each other's growth? Or what is your idea of couples relationship?
So when you say love, you still mean inner work. It's an interesting one. So, caveat, I'm currently fighting with my husband. So the answer may be a little bit different, but no. What's love? Should it be challenging or I definitely don't think it's about completing each other. I think the sense that you not that you need or you find someone to complete you, I think in itself, is probably not the most positive way to think about a relationship, right? Yeah. So I think of it more maybe as ways to not just challenge each other. How do you grow together? How do you discover? How do you learn together? That true partnership, right? But I also think partnership in this sense isn't 50-50. Partnership is some days when I'm 30, you need to be that 70, right? Some days he may be 30, I need to give the 70. So the partnership is much more how do we able to meet the person where they need to be met.
Yeah, that's actually, I agree completely with that. And all right, let's dig a little bit. So what's the fight about?
Oh my God, what's the fight about? So I think I'm currently building my business. So it's fairly new, right? It's been the last 2 years. I came out from 18 years in corporate. It's a big shift, right? Not just a shift identity, shift of the way you have to think about work. What does hard work look like? How do we build a team with limited resources, right? So I used to work with quite well-funded organizations. So when I say I can hire the best team. Usually I have enough budget. I have brilliant teams. And now I still have brilliant teams, but I've limited budget to do certain things. So there is, I was complaining. I was venting, right? I was waking up, I was venting. And the last 2-3 weeks has been quite tough in terms of just getting stuff going in a good way, right? We have a really interesting clients that we're onboarding. We're working through organizational changes and growth. And these are tough things that we're navigating with our clients, right? So I was venting, certain things weren't done the way that necessarily I would have done it. And I think he was fed up with my venting. So he said something, along the line of like, stop complaining. Like, if you're going to do this, stop complaining. And I think that just set me off. And I was like, if I can't vent to you, what good are you to me? And I was like, And I was literally that, I'm having a really, really busy week. I don't have time for this conversation. And then sort of then that evolve into different life choices, different plans we have. These things are always a trigger of things that's underlying. And I was like, you said this. And he's like, I never said this. And at some point, just like, so yeah, that's kind of, going back to kind of your question, right? Why, what do I think a partnership? And I think when I'm at my 30, I needed him to give me that 70. And I kind of feel like he was giving me 10 and say, just grow up, girl. And that was like, well, that to me is not partnership. And I think, so things are currently in the state of figuring out. How do we rebalance that partnership?
Oh, I love that. That's like, two segues we can go from there, but I'm going to just pick one for now. And I hear you. And at the end of the day, which, your journey to self-discovery, from my own journey of self-discovery, I understand that a lot of women, all we want to do is just be seen and heard.
Yes.
So if I pull myself out from your situation and just watch like a drama, and you're getting upset because you were not heard. You feel like you were not heard, and he was just like, shut up, like just do your do your stuff that you're supposed to do, and not complain about it. This is your choice and stuff. And actually I faced a lot of that with my ex-husband. So, and over time, when we got a divorce, people were always like, oh, why did you get a divorce? Was it because you cheated or he cheated or stuff and everything? And I was like, you know what? Actually, a lot of divorces around the world is not because of big affairs or big things or abuse or whatever. It's actually because the way I describe it to people is that you have this love block.
Yeah.
And every day you chip away at it. And then one day you wake up and you're like, what am I doing in this relationship that doesn't serve me anymore, And on top of it is also, like your identity shift, right? Yeah. So you were a mom, you're a wife, and then now you are trying to set up your own business. And actually we're very similar in that way. So, and that also leads me to why was that a trigger for you? Why was that what he said a trigger for you? And why were your clients' stuff a trigger for you? And what does that look like in terms of validation for you, for your self-worth?
Yeah. And it's a good question around trigger, right? So, and also being an executive coach, a lot of time I try to also dissect my own and try to let's take a step out and try to coach myself and the situation. And so sometimes I think it's interesting because a lot of time what is the right thing to do, but sometimes your body, your emotions guides you to the other way. So I'm very much aware of what does this all mean? What does this mean, in terms of the stage where we are? But I do want to sort of come back to this sense of identity, right? Because I do think that, yes, when you talk about divorce, I mean, I'm definitely not hoping to divorce my husband, at least not right now. Hey, but if you're listening, you watch out. But identity shift, and maybe let's not talk about my husband now. So taking a step back, one of pivotal moment, I didn't get a divorce, but I was engaged once when I was 27, 25. I was 25. We were meant to get married at 27. And about 3 months before the wedding, I called it off.
Okay.
All right, so that's the closest to so far divorce. But this sort of remind me sort of conversation about identity shift, because I think as our identity shift, our partners to a certain extent needs to somehow grow with that shift with you. Right. So I'm not saying he has to shift his identity, but there needs to be a growth and appreciation to understand that shift means that you are going to be different. But instead of a space where you're like, you're no longer the person that I thought you were, we probably shouldn't. And probably it's a good thing that we're not always the person you thought we were from when we were however old, but that we're shifting that identity together. So I think the trigger for me is I don't feel like he has fully grasped that shift for me and how that shift is impacting how I feel or make decisions or impacting the way I need him, right? I think is not necessarily a bad thing to need your partner. I think it's a beautiful thing. That's why you're in a partnership. That's why you're in that 50-50, 30-70 dance, right? So I think that trigger comes from not being embraced for the change I'm going through. And superficially, yes, I agree. I was venting. I was just blah, 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 right? But isn't that part of it is having a safe space to do so? Because I couldn't do it with anyone else. I'm not going to go out there and talk to a random person and speak the way I did. And I thought that was a safe space. So part of the trigger is you just took away my safe space.
Yes.
Right? And I don't think he fully understood that. We're very, very different.
I hear you completely. I completely understand what you're talking about because I'm so big about emotional safety. So with my current partner, it's people like, oh, what? You guys are so fast. Like you guys got married and then you guys have a kid. Like it's all like
How
within a
fast is
year.
fast?
Like a year.
Okay.
It's very fast. But I mean, I came out of a 14-year relationship, and he's in his mid-40s. So it's the time when you meet someone right? Yeah. And it's that emotional safety, exactly what you talked about, right? Like having the safe space to vent and to know that no matter what you do, there's somebody there for you, right? Yeah. So I completely hear you. And on the flip side, what about his emotional safety?
Of course.
And where he is right now, trying to accept or trying to learn the changes that you are going through and trying to meet you. Yeah. And of course, he might not understand, but there's this thing about, either women or people in general, I'm sure we have this assumption that, they should know what to do or they should know everything. And of course, then we get into the communication part. So where are you at on this spectrum with your relationship? Or in general, from what you've seen and with working with people and stuff. Yeah.
Definitely, I agree with, I also coach my clients. I work much more with an organizational coaching setting, right? So there is a lot of how do you make expectations explicit, right? You can't say my team is not performing if you don't explicitly talk about what those expectations look like.
What the KPIs are and everything.
So absolutely, I agree. And I think similarly, I think my husband, is going through his own inner work and his own journey, right? For the last few years, we've moved. So I'm from Taiwan originally, but I grew up in New Zealand. And after New Zealand, I moved to London. And then I was in Norway where I did my PhD. So I worked and studied the whole time. And after Norway, moved to Singapore. And then after Singapore to Indonesia. That's where I met my husband, although he's American. And then from Indonesia, we were there for 4 years and then back to Singapore.
Wow. Okay.
All right. So, through this, I think we've gone through different journeys together, obviously meeting each other, getting married, and then having kids. I recognize he's also going through his own, inner work. And that's, I guess, coming back to when we first started, to a certain extent, you can't be a safe space for others if you haven't found your own safe space, right? So perhaps there's a little bit of he's grappling with what is his space, I'm grappling with what's, and then we just not able to meet each other where we need to be met at this moment. Yeah.
I totally hear you. And you know what? There are unfortunately or fortunately a lot of couples out there with the same situation. And if you pull yourself out from this current skin in the game, if you pull your own skin out of the game, how would you approach it? If this were your organizational setting,
I know, right?
If this were your coaching clients.
so much easier to coach others to think about. I do think, regardless, there's sense of the space that's required to digest, right? So I'm very aware that at this current capacity, just there's so much going on that I do not have the capacity to have a space to think about it. So which I actually think is better in general not to engage when you don't have a space to think and digest, right? You need to be able to then do some inner work first before you do that. So I'm not even at that capacity to do so. And I'm very aware that I haven't, which to a certain extent doesn't necessarily show up. Again, everything shows up in a certain form of behavior, right? And that I am trading a line between you engage and say things that you don't want to say versus that's not engaged, right? But then not engaged comes across as cold and not connecting.
Yes.
So that's the so I'm kind of fully aware the state that I'm in. He is the sweetest man who is just he's taking the route, he pretend that fight didn't happen.
Oh,
okay,
so typical of
so
men.
that kind of annoyed me. Again, that my darling, if you're listening, it's really annoying. It's like, I know I need to process this and I haven't had time and I'm going to find the time. I will do it this weekend. I will schedule it. He's just kind of,
sweep it under the rug.
Yeah, he just kind of like, how's your day, doll? It's no, you did not just so again, but appreciating the differences. So to answer your question, how would I coach my sort of coachees? I would still think it's important to find the space to do that inner work, to reflect, to ask yourself questions, right? Like all the great questions you're asking, or what is trigger, what's underlying, what other things that needs to be resolved. And then figuring out the ways to deal with the other person in this relationship. But right now he clearly knows I am still mad. And then, he's going about his normal day. And I think that's it for now. I think one thing, hopefully, not taking it for granted, being part of marriage, is how do you know that you can come back and work on it?
Exactly.
I'm gonna park it. Yeah, I'm gonna park it. It's just in a parking lot. I'm not but the platform is not moving to a crash. It's just parked. I need it to be parked so I can move through part of my identity shift. There's all these things that's happening.
Yes, for sure.
Sort of work through.
For sure. So yeah, I've seen this in like my last 10 years, even though I'm a buff coach, right? But it actually, everything comes together. So next year I'm actually launching like a couples coaching program. So like I love that, we're diving deep into this and so talking about inner healing and parking and processing, right? Where in your life, if I might ask, do you think you learned to, okay, I need to park this and not talk about it? And, why is that a safe space for you?
Yeah. It's funny. Actually, it's not as common for me. I've not been a parking lot girl, actually. I've been much more...
trash it out.
Yeah. Okay. I think I used to be a lot more... if we're even with my husband, at the beginning of our relationship, I think if we were in a fight, I would just go. And he used to be probably the one be like, I need space.
Okay.
And I used to be a atrocious texter to be like, oh, you're going to get 15 different texts about how I feel about this thing right now. So be like, so you and I better not be in a fight, just to be like, we're just texting each other. There was a lot of unfiltered text, right? Finger going really fast. So I used to operate in that space. And so it's actually quite recent, I would say, and maybe part of identity shift or growing up and part of just practically being really busy. I learned to, I don't know if there's a bad way to describe it, but compartmentalize some of those, right? I was in a fight. I think in the older day, before I understand how to figure out how do I put in the proper parking lot, I would probably show up in a very influenced way, right? Like, oh, I started a bad day. This is going to be a terrible day versus I'm going to park this because there's this part of my life that need me to show up. Like I show up to my coaching sessions. I show up to my podcast. I show up to my workshop because that's where they need me to show up in a way that I should not let my own personal being impacting how I'm impacting them, right? So I think be much more aware of your own emotional burden impacting on others and therefore require me to park it. So I want to think of it not as I'm not avoiding nothing, but it just needs to be parked. It needs to be compartmentalized because at this moment, it's just not the space for me to digest, to deal with it. So it's actually quite recent.
Okay, cool. But that actually hits a spot for me because I do that too. So I used to be that like, oh, I need you to hear me. I need you to understand me.
Now.
Why are you not solving this now? And
Yeah.
it used to drive me nuts. Like when my ex or even like my current partner is sweeping it under the rug and just wake up like, good morning. It's not a good morning.
Exactly.
We just had a fight last night. It's not a good morning. It's just morning.
I hear ya.
Don't kiss me. Don't touch me. I'm still grumpy, And I go to my phone and I text because that's my safe space.
Yeah.
And I feel like I can express myself better without having to think on the spot and say like the wrong thing or forget to say something that actually is important and stuff. So texting to me was exactly like you, like the 15 texts or 15 super long texts,
Yes.
and reading through it before I send it. And
Just to elaborate on the point, I elaborated on that third text before.
because I forgot to say something.
Yeah.
But also learning to compartmentalize and showing up either for a birth or showing up for a coaching session or showing up to host space. Where do you feel inauthentic? Like, do you feel like, for lack of a better word, like an imposter syndrome kind of thing? Because you're not healed, you have issues that you're dealing with, and you have to like kind of switch over and put on a different hat, right? Or a mask, in that space. How do you feel as a practitioner or as a person, how does that come across inside, not outside? Because outside we can put on a front, we can put on a face, we can coach, we can be everything that we want to be, right? But on the inside, how do you process it?
Yeah. Well, I think there's a few things about authenticity. I do think recently, maybe unpopular opinion here, I think recently we weaponize the word authenticity, right? Especially at work. If you're angry as a leader, it doesn't give you the right to shout at your team, right? So if we simply saying behave the way how you feel is authentic, I do think that's probably a weaponized interpretation of authenticity. So I personally practice authenticity in the way that how do you understand your impact to others? Is that authentic to you and your values, right? So if my value is my mission and I believe in supporting others to extract their potential, then that is my authenticity. I need to show up authentic to their value. And in order to deliver that authentically, I cannot come in and say, I have a fight with my husband, so you're going to get the worst of me so that you don't get what, connected. So I think if we think about authenticity that way, I don't feel bad about compartment. I think that is authentic to the mission that I'm trying to deliver for my clients, right? And again, going back to compartmentalizing should be in the moment, right? It's not like for 10 years that you are parking this way. Ideally, the parking is allowing you that space to come back to do it. But I also know, yes, we're in a fight, but we kind of have to resolve this by this weekend. There's a time to it before it becomes
like a festering thing.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's when, to your point, that's how trauma sometimes stays in your body, is that it's lingering because you never resolve it. So I absolutely plan to come back to resolve it, but for the time being, in order to show up authentically to the commitments I've had already to people around me, I'm gonna compartmentalize it, and then come back to it.
I love that you because that is your true life mission and you want to help people and stuff. And I totally see your point. I really love that. And if we go back to, recently you've learned to compartmentalize, right? And that's part of your growth and part of your healing. How do you think that shift happened?
It's a good question. I think the shift probably happened a lot more once I became a mother. Mm-hmm. Well, I only have one. You are having
my
three.
Third.
Yeah. So I feel like, talking about motherhood, you are definitely much more experienced. But I think that shift probably happened with that more in the way that kids are like sponges, right? So if I do the unfiltered, I'm going to give it to you thing, I mean, the kids are going to feel it and experience it and hold that in their little tiny body. So I think there's a lot more, even more awareness of impact on your own emotions. And so even having fight with my husband, I was showing up definitely a lot more grumpy with my son, and I actually apologized for that at the end of the day, right? I let him know I'm sorry that I was feeling, I was grumpy this morning, and I think also is modeling those emotions so he can see and understand. And I apologize, and I hope tomorrow is going to be a better day. And this obviously has nothing to do with I love you, or this does not make me any less. I don't love you any less. But I think that more awareness of the emotion really forces me to re-examine the way that I actually deal with my own, emotional needs and outbursts to a certain extent. And then now being a business owner, I think the reality is just from a practical sense.
Yep.
You just have to compartmentalize. There's just so much to do. And I love it. And that's why, going back to our where we first, this whole thing started, right? Then that's why there is that one unfiltered safe space I was hoping to get from my husband, that need was not fulfilled. And that's where our whole thing spiraled, right? So yeah, that's probably also, in retrospect, is that really safe, right?
Yes.
Is that really fair for the person to be the unsafe space? That means to a certain extent he gets all the crap.
Yes.
Right? He doesn't get the beautiful side. Everyone else gets
Exactly.
a beautiful side. Your client gets a beautiful side. Your kid gets a beautiful side. Your friends gets a beautiful side, and your husband don't. So I mean, I understand. Again, what I understand and how I'm reacting to it are two different things. But yeah, those shifts are definitely happening.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I would always say the biggest self-growth I had was when I became a mother, and like how much you have to dig like deeper for like a drop of patience, or dig a little bit deeper for like, I don't want them to see me in that light, and to say, and to really like pull back and be like, I'm sorry I was grumpy, I'm sorry I yelled, or I'm sorry I used that words, and the words and the tone matter so much to them. And oh my God, like, and that also shifted like how you speak to people in general.
Yes.
So I think that's also where I started to learn all of that. But in terms of true healing, like inner healing and true healing, all of us have trauma, right? From childhood days, from high school days.
Yeah, for sure.
Breakups from parents, generational, everything, right? Is true healing fixing what's broken, or, remembering like you were never broken? And that also leads it back to like, why do you need that unsafe space or that unfiltered space to dump all your stuff, you know, and expecting that one person to hold it all?
Yeah.
Because, is that true healing also?
Yeah.
Something to like really think about. Like, what do you think?
Well, I don't know. I almost feel like, can we ever truly heal, right?
Yeah.
We're human. We're human. Part of the beauty of being human is recognizing we're just so imperfect, right? Through our own life experiences and trauma. And I think we said trauma in a
Very flippant way now.
Yeah, such a negative connotation in a way, versus how do we heal? I think is healing through our relationship with what has happened, right? So we can't make what has happened. So, I mean, I was bullied very heavily when I was much younger. I used to say, thank God there was the time before internet. That's how old I am, okay? That's before internet. I think nowadays kids with the bullying, it's much worse with all the cyber stuff. So this is the old school bullying, but it was still bullying, right? I had 2 years of very isolated sort of pre-high school life. I went to a girls' school. Girls can be so vicious.
Why are we so similar?
That's why they found us.
I know.
The trauma smells.
Yes, it's girls' school, pre-internet.
Girls' school, pre-internet. And
I had like diaries and writing and stuff, and it's bad.
It's bad. It's very bad, right? And I think from a young age, I also learned words have meanings and power. This is what I said to my son all the time. Words have meaning and power. Because, he's 5. So he'll say things like, I don't want to eat this. I'm never, ever going to eat this ever again. Or he went through a stage where he used to be like, I don't love you. But I know he doesn't mean it that way. So I would just, hey, words have meaning. Do you actually mean that? And very quickly he'll be like, no, I don't, mommy. But I think it's okay, right? It's teaching him to think through that. And he really doesn't, now he's 5. I'm talking like when he's like, I don't know, 3, 4, right? So also recognize he's going through his own growth. But I used to be like really upset about it. But I think, from a young age, knowing that words have meaning and there's so much, because being bullied, I think a lot of being bullied is that sense of being misunderstood, right? And you don't really, at least I got to a stage that I'm not going to justify my existence. You don't like my face. You don't like how I show up. There's clearly something you don't like about me. Should I be sitting here and justify, right? So I'm like, oh, whatever. But I was young, right? So I still remember, because I had no friends, no one wants to have lunch with. I would go to the toilet and eat lunch by myself. Aww. So I mean, those things stay with you, right? It's part of you. Is having a relationship with that you can talk about, ideally without crying. But I don't know. I don't know if I call it trauma, though. I don't label it trauma.
Would you, I think maybe what's triggering your tears, if I overstep, would be imagining your son going through that, right? If, imagining my kids going through what I went through in primary school and high school, it's not fun, right? And
no.
But I was never, I never needed that external validation in the sense. So I never needed to be like the girls that passed notes around and held hands and went to the washroom together.
That's what my husband said to me when he first met me. He's like, you're the most unneeding external validation person I've ever met. Right? So it's so funny. And is it our response to our experience?
Yeah, I think so. And but also because over the years, I had to people please to get love from the family in the sense, everyone's like, oh, you're such a high EQ, you're a good girl. I'm like, oh yes, that's love, right? So I feel like growing up, I got that, like checkbox, like good girl, do your work, A-star student, and then whatever happens in school, it's fine. If people don't get me out, it's fine. If people think I'm weird because I just walk to the washroom alone when I needed to go, I don't have to do you want to go to the washroom with me? And then 5 girls go together holding hands. So I never needed that, right? But I was kind of conditioned that is society, that's being accepted by society, that is love, right? And it took me a long time to do that identity shift to be back to where I am now, which is the same as you. If you don't like the way I show up, if you don't like the way I talk, if you don't like me for me, sure, go do your own thing, and I'm doing my own thing. I'm walking my own path. You can join me or you can leave me alone, right? And that's the external validation part. And talking about currently with the internet and the trauma you have, and of course the worry for our future generation.
I'm very worried. I'm very
with the
worried.
bullying, and stuff. And, all these people doing wellness and healing their trauma and everything. Where do you think the balance is? Or how do we help them in the way, How do we find, as practitioners, how do we help the kids find their balance? How do we help the current generation find their balance? Because we're working with so many of them now, right? The Gen Zs, the what's after Gen Z? I don't even know.
Gen Alpha. And
I know the strawberries and the snowflakes, and I don't know. I'm losing track, right? And and having the parents that's coddling them, that is generating even more of that stuff. And I don't know if I'll get canceled, but the Xanax, the lorazepam, and just handing out candies, and there's young girls and boys taking Xanax already. And I'm like, oh my God, boys and girls, you don't know what's out there in the world for you yet, And how do we as practitioners or as parents, how do we help that generation or our kids? You know, what do you think?
I think that's why this inner work becomes really important in the sense that how do we help them to find those center? Because I do think we get lost because we don't have an anchor for ourselves, right? And I wasn't brought up in the way that allows me to find that in a much more systematic way, right? Again, nothing wrong with my parents. That's their generation of parenting, right? Their generation of parenting looks very different to our generation of parenting. So recognizing that is how do we help our children or our next generation to think about how do they find agency? How do they understand control? How do they understand they are in control of their own feelings? You know, how do they teach, how do we teach them to identify and digest their feelings and, you know, hopefully before trauma becomes trauma or not even just having a healthy relationship with trauma, failure. I think there's a lot of work that we can hopefully help, you know, the next generation to figure out. Because with that anchor, I would like to think that then all the things around them just becomes a little bit more of noise and experiment. They're going to experiment and do something, right? Ideally, hopefully nothing that will bring them to stages that they cannot come back from. But with a strong anchor, I think that is going to help them through the way. And I say this even, I confronted my bullies.
Oh,
much later on in life. So maybe part of, you know, I don't call it trauma is because I've actually confronted everyone except one. Because I think she just didn't want to be confronted. And but I say confronted in a much more, this is a much nicer story than what it sounds actually. But, you know, because this happened when I was 12 and then again at 15.
Okay.
And I grew up in New Zealand. New Zealand is very small. So these are like similar group of people. But the behaviors are very similar, right? That, you know, a group of people, they said, we don't want to talk to Susan and I'll be alone. That's a very sort of general. So as we grow up, you know, 10, 15 years later, I would have the bullies and you know, getting in touch. And I still remember one of the bullies said to me, the reason I reach out to, she literally reached out to me on LinkedIn or something randomly. And then she said, the only reason I was brave enough to reach out to you is I looked at your LinkedIn and I think you're doing okay, which means we didn't ruin you. So I was like, wow, okay. And, you know, when someone says that, I give them, I thank them for their courage, right? We had coffee and we talked about it. And something that stuck with me was she's like, we didn't like you because you were the only person that seems to have your strong center. You knew what you wanted and who you were. We weren't. So we need the friends to validate. We need everyone to agree that she is the other and we are together because there's a group of us. She's the weird one. And she said, that's threatening. Like, we didn't like it because it make us feel insecure. I mean, I had the most beautiful conversation with my bullies, by the way. So, you know, I call them bully, but they have come to this life with me. And those conversations were healing. Yeah,
I
speaking
know,
of healing,
I love
right?
It. It's so
they
healing.
were healing conversations and maybe it was healing for them.
Yeah.
Because I think when you were 17, 16, you realized you were a bully.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, 12. I don't know how much, but let's say... So that's these conversations. That's why I go back to part of surviving bullying is how do we help our kids to find the center, right? The anchor, the center when everything else around you is not working out, but you have yourself to say, but I know who I am and I'm okay. Yeah. I'm not okay, whatever you don't like about me, but I like me. Yeah. So how much that liking yourself enough, not arrogance, but anchor, you know?
Yeah, like the strong sense of self and self-love.
Yeah, so that was a huge sort of learning when I had these healing conversation with my ex-bullies.
I love that. And I love that they recognized it and came to you. Even though like the first message, I would have been like, wow. You're only reaching out because you didn't ruin me. Yeah.
But that shows that also kids understand bullying has impact, right? They're not wrong. If I wasn't, you know, with my anchor, I could choose a very different. I mean, you look at kids now, right? You read the news. There are horrific things that are happening. I mean, the kids' suicide rate are way higher than what it should be. Actually, it should be zero. Right? Yeah. So words have meaning and can lead to action.
Yes.
That's why I'm teaching our son that, because so important. And I think that's the same thing for adults, right? Adults, we have to understand our words have meanings.
Yeah.
And that will impact people.
Before I continue on the well-being part, I just want to go back to, did you have an unfiltered safe space when you were 12 and 15 to share with anyone that was happening?
No. That was me. I'm my own unfiltered space.
Okay. And where do you think that, like, would you wish that you were reparented or parented differently?
That's a good question. Would I? I don't know. I've never thought about that question, right? Because I think I fully recognize the generation burden that comes with my parents' parenting. So I almost feel like that is like an unfair request to them for them to be one, because it goes back to they don't know how to be that. You can't be and maybe that's what has happened with my husband, right? You can't be a unfiltered safe space if you're not trained how to do it, right? Like you haven't learned to be that, then it's really difficult. So I don't think my parents ever had the skills or the societal sort of opportunity to do it. So I don't know. I've never wished for them to parent differently, actually.
Okay. But would you wish maybe you had an unfiltered safe person to at least go to them and be like, hey, this is happening in school and I'm not happy?
I don't know. Never thought about that. I've actually never thought about that. I will think, I'll put that in my parking lot. My parking lot is getting filled, okay? You're being parked with my angry husband. Now, the question, I think it's a fair question. I've never thought about it. I've never necessarily wished for it, but I don't know why.
Yeah. But you can see that manifests in your current relationship because you expect your husband to be that person.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why you got together with him, because he was that person. And then that one incident he's not, you're like, no, my world's falling apart, right?
Yeah.
And all right, now let's go back to, finding your anchor in your self-love. So do you think the current trend of like the wellness, like, oh, I need to do Pilates, I need to look good, I need to drink my green juice, I need to journal, like, all this generation, this current generation is doing.
Yeah.
I feel they are searching for their anchor and their self-love.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, I think social media plays a big part of it, right? It feels like we're FOMO and missing out if we don't do some of it, at least, right? So I think true anchor is actually understand why you do it. Like I do Pilates, but not because of societal. It's literally because I'm aging and my back hurts. All right, I can tell you, I sit in front of a desk, like my back hurts. I need Pilates for the physical centeredness of myself, right? So I think finding your center is actually know why you do things, right? Why are you showing up? Why are we having a podcast? Why are we having this conversation right now, right? That is the anchor. So I don't know if all that self-help actually help us find the anchor. If anything is sort of there's just a lot of noises. I like to think of them as experiment, right? So it's like I also do yoga, yin yoga, so I'm certified doing that. But right now, my physical being, like every time I do yoga, it doesn't speak to me the same way. So that's not what my body needs right now. That's not what my physical or mental being needs right now, right? So I think anchor is actually knowing what you need at a certain time and sort of recognizing that. I don't think you can do all that by drinking juice, and I think you do all that by having a lot of inner conversation. And I just reflecting on your question, do I wish I had an unfiltered space? I think I've been doing a lot of talking to myself, and that's my filter space, right? So I think we need to learn to talk to ourselves.
Yeah. And I think in general now, like especially what you said with social media, it's a lot of, again, external validation.
Yeah.
And
talking
even
to others.
Yes,
right?
talking to others, showing others, but no one's going in, right? Everyone's going out, right? Also drinking the juice, like, doing the journaling even, it's out. But I would recommend journaling, though.
I mean, journaling in, you know.
Yeah,
I think
because you're trying to
is putting it down.
pull whatever in so that you can see it, you know. And
exactly.
Yeah, and I love that because I always tell my clients, if you write something down, if you write your problem down and you can see it, it actually doesn't look as bad as if it's just in your mind and it's
That's
just
true.
festering in there
Yeah.
and you're going into the spiral. So it actually looks worse.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why we like texting.
Exactly. Well, actually, when I text somebody, it does look as bad as he's 50. No. But speaking of that, I also do the same thing with my clients about writing down your feelings, right? Because again, we are so conditioned to when someone says, "How's your day?" "My day is good." "How's your day?" "I'm busy." Right? Versus, "How are you feeling?" Right? So that feeling, we're practicing vocabulary and getting it right out. Even just yesterday, I was working with a coachee. This is the same thing, right? She's talking about how she wanted, as a professional setting, want to be relevant. So we wanted to really understand what those words actually mean and how they. So we were doing like, you know, writing down these words, and when you see it, and how does that make you feel when you also see these words, right? There's a lot of power, I think, in words, and then writing it down. I think,
Yeah,
you're
for
right.
sure. And I don't know if you realize, but I've been peeling back layers.
I'm sure. I'm like, when you start saying you're a trauma-informed coach, I'm like, oh, this is gonna not end well because, you know, somebody's gonna cry. Well, this is me. But yes.
So one of the, and I love this. So I do this practice called 9D breathwork, and I hold space for them. Have you ever tried it?
No, I have not.
Yeah, I should invite you for a session.
Okay.
Yeah,
Am I gonna cry?
Most likely, yes.
Okay,
You'll
great.
cry, you'll scream. And I feel, you know, by what we've been doing this whole session is to peel back like different layers. Of course, we don't have a full like day to do it or multiple sessions, and I only have a limited time to do this. But do you think, you know, going back to healing, going back to your childhood stuff, and what you will experience in 9D is the true healing is the peeling back of the layers. And I love that you've really done that on your own by confronting the bullies, right? So where do you think in your life, like who else would you confront?
Oh gosh. Oh well, my husband's already in the parking lot, so he's been confronted.
He's the next in line. Watch out, husband.
Interesting question, right? Who would
Yeah.
I confront?
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting just as I think about this, because I went to another session a while ago where I can't remember what it was now. It's kind of, it is more a coaching tool. We were talking about how, also a little bit about like unresolved relationship. Right? So they started the day with like, you need to pick one unresolved relationship that you want to work on. And I literally sat there and say, I don't have any. I really don't feel very unresolved in my life. And I say that not in a like a
masked way.
Yeah, and not coming from a point of ignorance of I know these are the people where we have relationships that just didn't go the way it's planned, right? Typically you want to resolve them, but I have no unresolved feelings about it. I mean, I have resolved it within myself. So it's not resolving. I don't know how much is resolving with the other person versus resolving it in yourself to say that relation didn't work out and that is okay. I understand. So I don't have people to confront.
What about anyone else? Like that one bully that you haven't said anything to?
No,
You're fine?
I'm fine with it.
Wow, I love that.
I'm fine with that.
Wow,
You know,
I
I think that's the you know, I can empathize why she would have done that, right? You know, going back to part of resolving is to understand how they all feel, right? If her sense of belonging needs to come from my otherness, I understand. So I'm okay. I have no idea how she's doing in life. I don't know. I mean, I could probably I remember her name though. So I should probably Google her.
Yeah, you should.
That's probably going to be what happened after this. But I don't feel the need to confront her. But if she ever wants to have coffee, I'm always like, sure.
Now, that's the armor you've built over the years for yourself, right? Because you're like, okay, I talk to myself, I resolve it within myself, and I'm fine. Now, what if I ask you to shed that armor? And I ask you to take it off, right? And I kind of peeled the armor back a little bit earlier. And that caused the tears, right? Now, if you truly let yourself go and be like, I don't need to be strong. For now, I don't want to be the anchor, right? What would that feel like to you?
I didn't even pay for this therapy. This is great. How would it feel? I mean, I guess it will feel very naked. I mean, I will feel very, very, not soft is not the right word. I will feel very unsupported, like a skeleton without the skeleton.
Yes.
Yeah, like I will feel mushy and not in a good way.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think I'll like it.
Yeah. But would you dare to go there?
Sure. To say more crying. We got 10 minutes.
No, we have 10 minutes, but we won't go there today. But,
Yeah.
but I'm just asking more of like, would you walk that
Path?
walk that path?
I will think about it, right? Because I also think you need to invite things into your life with intention, right?
Yes.
So I would imagine it being a right moment in time to do that. It could be that it is a right moment in time now that I don't know yet, that requires me to go to my parking lot and figure it out. But I would say, yes, I'm willing to do that when I make sure it's the right moment in time.
But as we
Is
know,
that
as
part
mothers,
of the armor talking?
Yes.
I can tell. You're gonna look at me and say,
as mothers, you know there is never the right time or the safe time, and it's like there's always something happening in our lives, right? But just something for you to think about. Like, would you walk that path without your armor and not be like, I've got this together, you know, without the self-talk, without like, I'm good. Like, you know, let yourself be like, just, I'm not good. I'm not in a good space, right? And I don't want to be good. And I don't want to be okay with whatever that happened to me, right? And I don't want to be okay with trying to understand the other person or why they did that to me, whether it's your parents, your friends, your bullies, your whatever, right? I don't want to be okay. And what does that look like for you?
So it's interesting because I want to ask you a question. I think self-love is very often at some point tip over to this feeling of almost like this narcissism, right? The fact that if we come to a point of declaration of I don't care or like it's all about me, like I don't like the balance, right? Striking that balance is one that I think worth discovery, right? And so when you describe that, I ask myself, but why do I want to feel that way? Like, why do I want to not understand another person's point of view and therefore resolve an internal whatever tension and therefore no longer trauma, right? It's kind of like so I don't know, to your question, like, maybe the answer to this, I'm not ready to walk that path because it feels almost too narcissistic for me, so not for others. We're doing the inner work. If doing the inner work, keep doing it. I'm talking about me. I'm still working on it.
We are all working on it.
It just feels a bit too much about me, if anything, right?
Yeah.
It's I don't know. I want to hear your views on it. Like, how do you...
Well, all I'm asking is just... What if you give yourself the grace that you've been giving everyone?
I mean, I feel I do.
Yeah. But it's because you're trying to understand them.
Yeah.
But you'd be like, oh, it's okay. It's like my parents, or, you know, it's their generation and stuff. Or like, oh, you know, the bullies were insecure and they were using me to help them feel better. So it's okay, you know? But what if you switch it around? I'm not asking you to like, you know, bulldoze through everyone and everything and like, you know, throw red paint everywhere. It's just finding the balance of, you know, like what that is like for you.
Yeah.
And you don't have to tell me, you don't have to tell anyone. And which is why I love the 90 breath work and I really want you to come because it's, you know, you're masked and there's a headphones, a guided hypnosis meditation and stuff.
I know.
You know of 90?
I know of it. I've been invited to sessions. I never have found the space and the time to do it.
Okay. Maybe it's the time now.
Yeah.
And what I love
because I
about
saw it. That's why I'm like, oh, that's the one that with the
So what I love about it is you actually walk that journey and walk it without armor, without needing to be anything for anyone, without saying a single word. And you just go through that journey on your own. And that healing journey. And I love it for everyone that goes through it.
Okay.
And on the other side, if you come out of it and you want to talk about it, I'm there. And if you want to like decompress,
I'm gonna text you about it.
Yes, I'll get 15 long texts. I love it. I have so many. But
Before we dive back in, a quick rinse from our sponsors.
Okay, that brings us to our final partner for this round.
Yep.
Yeah, we are in their amazing space.
Yes, they've kindly offered their space for us to do this ad read, right? And we really love the space coming in. I would say we're the first few people here in the shop before it actually launches.
Correct.
So we're really excited that they've moved to this new space and even partner with other brands to, bring that uniqueness that each brand has into the space itself to make some sort of a community kind of thing.
That's right. Yeah, so getting to know the founder, really feeling him share about his vision, really can feel his passion and his excitement. I remember we were here a few days ago and he was watching him help customers dress, try out outfits. Like I get that this is one of the things he really wants to do.
Yeah, correct. And I think to start it out and go at it for 7 years and still, putting a lot of faith into making that brand work.
Correct.
And whenever you start something very new, very unconventional and bold and daring, there are going to be challenges, right? Not everybody's going to agree. People are going to constrain you back in the same box that everybody else is in. But then the courage to step beyond that and fearlessly pursue what you believe, it's a different way of living and challenging your own identity to the extent that it fits into the kind of collections that you develop. I think that's quite something.
Yeah, so I feel like in order to really capture his words and his meaning, I will read specifically what he has written on his website, because I feel like that properly captures what he's trying to communicate and what he's been trying to communicate all these years. Okay, so the brand is called Phoenix, right? We are in the Phoenix store. So Phoenix is a F flow, right? So for F for athleisure and flow, because that's how he imagines people move through life. It's an F flow lifestyle fashion brand from Singapore that emerged from an inner desire to build a fluid wardrobe that steps out of the ordinary. So by uniting creative details with thoughtful fabrics, every person in Phoenix lives in seasons of unparalleled comfort and style.
Yeah, I really like that because, in short, what this place does in terms of what they produce is gender fluid.
Correct.
Kind of wear that's comfortable in different ways, right? You have your fit, your form, and also your flow.
Yeah, so that's his philosophy, how he thinks about the different collections.
Correct. And every collection, when I hear him speak of it, I almost see his creativity at work. Actually going into how it looks, who's going to wear it, and what will they be doing, what will they be wearing, what are the complementary brands that they will also be utilizing while they dress this way. And I think it's like such an entire huge vision that goes into the production of each piece.
Correct. So for people who maybe they are not too familiar with fashion, or if you're really familiar with fashion, you really should come down to the store and experience it for yourself. Let the wonderful folk here bring you through the different collections. And tied to what we have here today is to encourage all of you to come down to the store. So it's a very exclusive 12% off. It's very different, right? Off everything here in the new physical store.
Correct. So their opening is on 10th of October, 2025. And I would like to invite you down to experience the store for yourself and also, experience the pieces that they have. Use that to explore your identity. Because a lot of the different wares that are out there constrain you to the feminine or to the masculine.
That's right.
But this one allows you to explore the boundaries of both, depending on which you lean closer to. Right? To explore yourself in a different way. And perhaps be bolder into stepping into who you are.
Correct. Find a different way of expression. Not just the normal binary thing.
So come out to the shop. If anything interests you, just code CYT12 to them, and then they'll give you 12% off everything in the store.
Now back to the rest of the episode.
But I do love that. What do you think is the hardest work you've ever done in your whole life?
I think the hardest work is right now being a parent, being a mom. Because I deeply know what I do now is going to impact his life. Like forever. So that is a hard piece of work. Again, you're confronted with your own being and your choices and your family's choices. You're confronted with a lot of things that I think without being a parent, you just kind of don't think about it or don't understand how. So I'm a systems researcher, which means I think about everything connects. So I have this crazy ability to just connect everything, right? So that's kind of that truly think about the system that whatever I'm imparting now, I know like 30 years, he might be sitting in a room in a podcast and he's going to say, my mother said, right? And that will either say, I feel safe when she says this, or she was never the unfiltered space for me, right? So that's the hardest work. And it's hardest work is because it's so uncertain. I can't be certain. You can't control the outcome, you know?
I know. And that's why I think, I thought about the divorce for like 4 or 5 years. And I hate it when people go like, oh, what about your kids? Like, are you not thinking about your kids? I'm like, that's the first thing I think about. That's the first thing. Why do you think it took so long, right? And that's where it is, right? I finally pulled the trigger because I pulled the plug or whatever they call it, right? Because when I wanted to model like self-love and model choosing yourself, what does that really look like, And I think about the boys and I'm like, when they grow up and they're in an unfulfilled relationship or, they're in a marriage, I don't want them to stay and be like, oh, I did it for the kids.
Yeah.
When now I'm telling them every day, every night when we have our pillow talk, you need to love yourself the most. You need to love yourself the most. And if I'm not modeling it and it's just words, even though words do carry meanings, but it doesn't match up.
Yeah.
So I completely hear you. And I love that we're on this podcast together. We don't have much time left, but I still think like we need to go and get like a drink together after I give birth. Get a few drinks and unpack and I love this system research thing and linking and connecting everything because I feel so in sync with you, like we do so many things as the same together. I always talk about birth as a rite of passage, because it links to everything what people don't think about, right? If you have a good birth, you have a good postpartum, you have a good breastfeeding journey. What does that lead to? You have a better relationship with your husband, right? And then what does that lead to? Your kid is growing up in a safe environment because your husband and wives are, the husbands and wives are good in a nuclear family or your partners, right?
Yeah.
And that leads to the child growing up in a safe environment and then, grows up into a safe human and then he can generate that into a safe family and that rolls on and continues. But if you have a bad birth, and then you have a bad postpartum and a bad healing journey, and then it just snowballs into something else. And people don't realize, and I'm sure you understand where that connection comes from and the ripple effect of it, right? And
I mean, I gave birth during COVID and it wasn't the smoothest, right? So I definitely know it has impacted some decisions and how feelings and so on. So, but that's for another podcast. Stay tuned.
Yes, talking about birth as a rite of passage. We'll come back. And anyway, thank you so much, Susan, and thank you for being vulnerable and open and authentic. And I love it.
And thank you for creating a safe space.
Yes, and we will definitely grab that few drinks we're talking about. Yes. Thank you, everybody, for watching this episode, and we will be back. Stay tuned.